A man standing at his kitchen counter late at night, holding an unopened envelope, phone face down beside him. I need you to hear me out before you judge me, because by the end of this story, you're going to want to. Trust me, I already judged myself. It started the way disasters usually do. Small, quiet, something easy to miss. An invitation arrived in the mail on a Thursday. Heavy cream envelope, embossed gold lettering, the kind that announces itself before you even open it. Elias Vance, my best friend since we were 16. The man who stood beside me in the worst year of my life without flinching. The man I would have done anything for. I tore it open, read the first line, Elias Vance and his beloved. And then my phone rang. Client emergency. I dropped the card on the counter and spent the next 2 hours putting out someone else's fire. I never finished reading it. I texted Elias that night. Got the invite, I'll be there, wouldn't miss it. He replied with a single emoji, a heart. Not a word about who the bride was, not a name, not a hint. And I, like an absolute fool, never asked. A phone screen glowing in the dark, a string of unread messages visible. Here's the thing nobody tells you about life-changing moments. They almost never announce themselves. They sit quietly in your notifications while you're busy doing something else. 3 days before the wedding, at 11:47 p.m., a message came through from a number I deleted from my contacts over a year ago. I was asleep. I didn't see it until I was already in the car on the way to the venue. Leon was driving. I was half asleep in the passenger seat, scrolling through my phone when I opened the message thread. One line. No name. Just a number I didn't recognize at first. Please don't come to this wedding. I'm begging you. If you come, everything falls apart. I'm sorry for everything. I'm so sorry. I stared at it. Who is this? I typed back. No reply. The message showed delivered, then nothing. I looked at the number for a long time, turning it over in my memory. And then it hit me. I knew that number. I just deleted it so I'd stop being tempted to use it. Celeste. I hadn't heard from her in over a year. Not since the night she showed up at my apartment door at midnight and left before sunrise without explaining why. Everything okay? Leon asked from the driver's seat. I locked my phone. Fine, I said. But my hands weren't steady anymore. Please don't come. Everything falls apart. I should have turned the car around. I have replayed this moment more times than I can count. I didn't turn around. A grand venue foyer. A man frozen mid-step, all movement around him blurring into nothing. The estate was stunning. Manicured grounds, a glittering lake in the background, floral arrangements that probably cost more than my rent. The kind of venue that made you feel the weight of the occasion the moment you stepped inside. I heard her before I saw her. Laughter. That specific laughter, a half second too bright, the way it always was when she was nervous in a room full of strangers. I turned, and the floor dropped out from under me. Celeste. In white. Her hair up, surrounded by bridesmaids, radiant in the way only someone carrying an enormous secret can be radiant. Like every emotion is turned up 3 settings too high because the alternative is falling apart. My ex-girlfriend. The woman I'd loved for 3 years. The woman who'd left without an explanation and then appeared at my door in the middle of the night and disappeared again by morning. She was Elias's bride. Leon grabbed my arm. I hadn't realized I'd stopped moving. The whole room was flowing around me and I was a stone in the middle of it. Hey, Leon said. Is that? Yeah. Is she? Yeah. He didn't say anything else. There was nothing to say. That's when Celeste turned. And the thing that wrecked me, really wrecked me, was that she didn't look surprised. She looked directly at me, without scanning the room, without a second of confusion. She knew exactly where I was standing. She'd known I was coming, and she'd begged me not to. A man pacing alone in a coat room, voice low, face pale, hand pressed flat against the wall. I found the nearest empty room and called Elias. He picked up on the second ring. Tell me you knew, I said. No greeting, no softening. Silence. Tell me you knew she was my ex and this wasn't some accident I walked into. I knew, he said. I closed my eyes. How long have you been with her? 14 months. 14 months. The same number of months since Celeste showed up at my door. I did that math immediately, and I hated myself for doing it. She came to my apartment, Elias, 14 months ago. Did you know that? A longer silence, the worst kind. Yes, he said. The word landed like something physical. What do you mean, yes? I mean, I knew. I mean, we need to talk tonight and you need to let me explain. And I know how this sounds right now. She texted me 3 days ago, I said. She told me not to come. Did you know that too? Nothing. Elias? No, he said. I didn't know that. And for the first time, his voice cracked, just slightly. The sound of a man who thought he had every variable controlled suddenly realizing he didn't. Don't leave, he said. Please. I know I have no right to ask you anything right now, but please don't leave. The string quartet started up somewhere down the hall. Please, he said again. I stood there in that coat room for a long time after I hung up. Then I walked back out. A wedding ceremony in full. A single man seated alone in the very last row. Expression unreadable. I sat in the back row. If there had been a row behind it, I would have sat there too. I watched Elias at the altar. He looked composed. He looked happy. He looked like a man who'd made his peace with every choice that led him here. When his eyes found me in the back of the room, the relief on his face was so visible it almost made me angrier. He gave me a nod. I didn't return it. Then the music changed. The doors opened, and Celeste walked in. I have tried, genuinely tried, to describe what that moment felt like. 3 years of loving someone, one brutal silence where it ended, one night that never got explained. All of it compressed into the 10 seconds it took her to walk through that door and begin moving toward another man. She passed my row. She didn't look at me this time, but I looked at her. And I noticed something. The gown. The cut of it. The way she held her bouquet, lower than natural, positioned deliberately in front of her body. The slight, unmistakable change in her silhouette that you'd only see if you'd spent enough time studying every version of her. I told myself I was wrong. I told myself I was looking for things that weren't there because I was in shock and my brain was trying to construct a story. I told myself that, but I didn't believe myself. A bride at the altar, mid-vow, eyes drifting involuntarily to the back of the room. One single, devastating second. I watched her face. I couldn't help it. I'd studied that face for 3 years. I knew every expression she had. I knew the difference between her real emotions and her performed ones. And during those vows, I watched something happen that no one else in that room would have caught. Elias spoke first. His voice was steady and warm and genuine. When it cracked at the end, the crowd melted. Celeste smiled at him, a real smile. Then it was her turn. She started strong, clear voice, certain words, the kind of vows that people rehearse until they feel spontaneous. Then she stopped. 1 second. Maybe 2. Her eyes moved. Slowly, against her will, I think, the way something moves when it has no business moving but can't be stopped. All the way to the back of the room. To me. And in that second, there was more information than I knew how to hold. Guilt. Grief. Something unresolved that neither of us had ever named out loud. And something else. Something that looked, unmistakably, like a warning. Elias felt it. I watched his hands tighten around hers. She looked back at him. I do, she said. And the pause before those 2 words was the most honest thing I heard all day. A reception hall frozen in a single suspended moment. every guest watching, one man barely standing. The reception was loud and beautiful, and I barely registered any of it. I stood at the edge of the room. Leon stayed close without being asked. I think he understood that I needed a witness to this, that experiencing it alone would have been too much. Then Elias tapped a glass. The room went quiet. "Before anything else tonight," he said, "Celeste and I have something we want to share with everyone we love." I felt it before I saw it. Her hand moved to her stomach. Slow, gentle. The room exploded. Applause, tears, people reaching for each other. I stood completely still and did the only math that mattered. Celeste and I had ended, officially, almost 2 years ago. But 14 months ago she had appeared at my door and stayed until 4 in the morning and left without an explanation, and we had never spoken about it again. 14 months. And now she was standing in a wedding dress with her hand on her stomach. My glass slipped. Leon caught it. "Don't," he said, immediately, firmly. "The timing. Don't." "Leon, I said don't." He stepped in front of me, blocked my view of her, made me look at his face instead of hers. "Whatever you're calculating right now, you stop. You hear me?" I heard him. I couldn't stop. What if the baby is mine? A woman stopped in a dim corridor, back to the camera, shoulders tense, a man approaching behind her. I found her leaving the reception. I didn't plan it. I wasn't even sure what I was going to say. She heard my footsteps and stopped walking before I said her name. Didn't turn around, just went still, one hand pressed flat against the wall. Then she turned. "I told you not to come," she said. No accusation, just exhaustion. "How far along?" She looked at me for what felt like a full minute. 4 months? I did the math again. 4 months back from today would put conception around the same time as the night she came to my door. Not after, not before, exactly around. "Celeste, it's not yours." Her voice was flat and certain. "Before you ask, it's not." "How can you be sure? The timing, I'm sure." She met my eyes without flinching. "I'm telling you, it's not yours." "Then why did you text me 3 days ago and beg me not to come? Why did you look at me like that during your own vows? Why are you standing in this hallway right now instead of walking away?" Silence. Something moved across her face. She opened her mouth. And then, from around the corner, a voice. "There you are." Elias, standing at the end of the hallway, looking at both of us, taking in the scene, taking in the distance between us and the fact that neither of us had heard him coming. His expression was unreadable. "Celeste," he said quietly, "they're waiting for you." She looked at me one last second. Then she walked toward him. He put his hand on her back and they turned the corner together. But right before they disappeared, Elias looked back at me over his shoulder. And the look on his face was not anger, it was fear. A woman in a cocktail dress approaching a man at the edge of a garden, expression serious and urgent. I stepped outside to get air. The garden was mostly empty, the sounds of the reception muffled by glass and distance. A woman appeared beside me. I didn't know her. Mid-40s, sharp eyes, champagne flute in hand. "You're the ex," she said. I looked at her. "I'm Celeste's cousin," she said before I could respond. "Renata, I've known about you for 2 years." I didn't say anything. "I also heard your conversation in the hallway," she said, lower now. "Not all of it. Enough." "Then you know there's nothing to hear." She tilted her head. "She told you 4 months." "Yes." A pause. "She told Elias 4 months too," Renata said carefully. "She told her doctor 4.5. She looked at me without blinking. "She told me 5, back in January when she first found out, before she'd decided what to say to everyone else." The garden went very quiet. "I'm not telling you this to cause trouble," she said. "I'm telling you because I watched that woman during those vows, and I watched you in the back row, and I think someone needs to tell you. The numbers don't add up, and Celeste knows they don't." She finished her champagne. "I love my cousin," she said, "but she is not honest when honesty is hard for her. She never has been." She walked back inside. I stood in the garden for a long time after that. Two men standing at the edge of a dark lake, the lit estate windows reflected in the still water behind them. I found Elias near the water an hour later. Or he found me. It didn't matter. We stood at the edge of the lake, and for a long moment neither of us said anything. "Renata talked to you," he said, not a question. "Yes." He exhaled slowly. "The dates," I said. "You know about the dates." A pause. "I know there's a question," he said carefully. "Celeste told me there was a question months ago. She told me everything. About that night at your apartment, about the timeline not being completely clear yet. She was honest with me." He looked out at the water. "She asked me if I still wanted to marry her. I said yes." I stared at him. "You knew there was a chance the baby might be mine?" I said. "And you still didn't tell me?" "No," he said. "I didn't tell you." "Why did you invite me here, Elias? Why did you invite me to this wedding knowing all of that?" He turned to look at me then, and I saw something on his face I hadn't expected. Not guilt, not manipulation, something quieter than both. "Because I needed you to know the truth from me," he said. "All of it. Face to face. Because if I'd called you on a phone and said, 'I'm marrying Celeste and there's a chance,' you would have disappeared, and I would have lost you. I made the worst possible choice trying to keep both things. I know that." His voice dropped. "And because there are paternity questions the doctors have been circling, and if it is yours, you have the right to know. You have the right to be involved. I wasn't going to make that decision without you." The music from the reception drifted out across the water. "So what happens now?" I asked. "We wait for the test," he said. "And whatever the answer is, we figure it out. You and me. You and me," he said, "if you'll still let that exist." A man sitting upright on a hotel bed at midnight, holding a letter, expression stripped of all pretense. The envelope was on my pillow when I got back to the room. My name in Celeste's handwriting. I recognized it instantly. She always pressed down too hard, the letters leaving soft indentations in the page beneath. I sat down and read it. She wrote about the night she came to my apartment. She wrote about why she couldn't tell me the truth when she got there. She wrote about Elias and the guilt and the year of silence. She wrote about finding out she was pregnant, and the fear and the calculation she'd done alone at 3 a.m, staring at a calendar. And then, near the bottom of the second page, one sentence that I read 4 times. "I told you 4 months because it was the version of the truth that hurt the fewest people. I think you understand what I mean by that." I put the letter down. She hadn't told me the truth in that hallway. She'd told me the version that would make me walk away. And the worst part, the part that kept me awake until 3 a.m, was that I understood exactly why she'd done it. And I hated that I understood. Because understanding it meant I couldn't be cleanly, simply furious. It meant everything was as complicated as it felt. A man standing alone at the edge of a lake at dawn, one hand in his pocket, watching the mist. I was at the water before sunrise. I stood there in the cold and tried to organize what I actually knew versus what I was afraid of. I knew Elias had betrayed me. I knew Celeste had been dishonest with me. I knew there was a child who might be mine, and a test that would eventually answer that question whether I wanted it to or not. I knew that in 3 hours I was going to drive back to my life, and this day would be behind me, and nothing would be the same. Before I left, I sent Elias one text. "Tell me when the test results come, whatever they say." He replied in under a minute. "I will, I promise." I don't know what kind of story this is. I don't know if I'm owed an apology or if I owe one. I don't know what I'll do when the results come, or how I'll feel, or what version of these relationships survives. What I know is this. I walked into that wedding carrying nothing but a suit and some unfinished history. I drove home carrying something I'll carry for the rest of my life. And somewhere out there, a test is either going to blow everything apart or give us all just enough ground to stand on. I'm still waiting for that call. So I need to hear from you. What would you have done? If you found out your best friend had been hiding a relationship with your ex for over a year and then invited you to the wedding, would you have stayed? Would you have walked out? Would you have said something in front of everyone? And whose fault is this, really? Mine for not finishing that invitation? Elias for staying silent for 14 months? Celeste for lying to everyone, including herself? Tell me in the comments. I'm not kidding. I genuinely want to know where you land on this, because I still don't know where I do. And if you're the kind of person who needs to know how this ends, subscribe, because when that call comes, you'll hear about it here first.